was working as a CNA at a nursing home. Every lunch break, I would go out to my car and nap for about 15 minutes. I fall asleep fast. It was summer, and Missouri summers can be unbearable, so I would turn on the air conditioning. Whenever I would do this, for some reason, after about 10 to 15 minutes, my car would start knocking. It didn't do it when I was driving. I had not noticed it before. A lot of the times, it was this knocking that would wake me up in time to not oversleep my break. One day, the weather was beautiful, and the temperature was perfect, so I decided to open the windows rather than using my air conditioner while I napped. Oddly enough, I was awakened by the knocking again, only my car wasn't running. My eyes flew open and I saw this lady in a white coat, like a doctor's coat, knocking on my windshield. I didn't recognize her and figured she was one of the lead nurses on another hall than mine. When I got out of the car, I expected to see her walking across the parking lot, but she was gone. I got back to my hall and told my lead nurse what happened in case that nurse decided to tell her I was sleeping in my car on break. Near the end of my shift, my lead told me that she went to talk to the other nurses about it and none of them knew what I were talking about. I was sure she was one of the nurses there. My lead nurse asked me what the nurse looked like, so I describe her, and she got this confused look on her face. Then, she got up and walked into the nurse's office. She came out with a framed group picture of the nurses that worked for the nursing home, and there was the nurse I had seen. She even had the white doctor's coat on. Only, my nurse informed me that she passed away a couple of years ago. It turned out that I wasn't the only one who claimed to see her. Then, it occurred to me that the knocking had been going on since I started taking naps out in the parking lot. I thought there was something wrong with my air conditioner, but the funny thing was, it never happened any other place besides when I was parked in the nursing home lot. Anyway, I only had a couple more days working there because I had taken another job working as a med tech at a nearby hospital. On my last day there, I bought a rose on the way in, and as I was leaving, I laid it in the grass next to my parking space. Kind of a thank you for watching out for me, and not letting me sleep over my break.
It was a usual August night. The weather was rough, giving the signs of heavy rain. Around 11 p.m., it started drizzling. An auto driver was returning, after dropping the passenger, to his house. It was getting late, so he was in a hurry. He was tired. That's obvious after working for whole day. Driving is not so easy after all. Even worse, if you don't get paid properly after working so hard. The passenger didn't pay him well for the ride, and the irony is that they should have paid him more because the driver had to cross the NH33 highway linking Jamshedpur to Ranchi to reach the destination, that too on late night with such extreme weather. While thinking about all these pros and cons of his profession, he drove back home. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he saw a young girl in her early 20s, dressed in a full-sleeved white-red salwar kameez. It looked like she needed help. It was quite unusual for people to be at that road at that time, but it was none of the auto driver's concern. He was in no mood to take any more passenger at that time because of the weather and the approaching midnight, but thinking of the girl alone on the highway, as a human, he felt it as his duty to help her. He stopped his auto near the girl, and asked, "What are you doing so late on the highway, madam?" The girl seemed tensed. She responded in a scared tone, "Buyer, my car broke down and my cell is dead. I don't know what to do now. I have been waiting here from past 15 minutes, but no one helped me. Please drop me to my house, please. I will pay double to your rate." Thinking of the girl and the price offered, he agreed. "Sit. I will drop you. Tell your address," the driver asked. "It's nearby. Sonari," she answered calmly. The driver, just out of curiosity, asked, "Madam, what are you doing so late at night at such a deserted place, that too alone?" The girl remained silent and started looking outside the window. The driver continued, "Madam, this highway is not safe, especially for a girl. You should be careful." The girl ignored his words and continued looking outside. The cold wind was blowing her long hairs. She no longer seemed tensed, rather she was enjoying the weather, drive and the city lights of Jamshedpur. After 15 to 16 minutes, they reached her house. The girl stepped out of the auto and said, "Buyer, how much should I pay?" "Give me the genuine rate, 300 rupees," the driver replied. "Oh, I have only 200 now. Wait, I will bring from inside," she said nonchalantly. "Madam, it's getting too late. Please go and come fast," the man replied. The girl went inside the house. The man saw the clock. It was 11:58 p.m. The driver was waiting outside. He kept waiting, looking again and again at the door, but there was no sign of her. It became 12:15. He thought the girl has cheated him and she ran. Finally, he decided to go inside the house and inquire. He pressed the doorbell twice. An old man in his 60s opened the door. He said, "Yes, what do you want?" The driver explained, "Around 15 minutes back, I dropped a girl here. She didn't had cash, so she went inside the house to bring money but didn't return. Please give me my money fast. I am getting late." The old man pointed his finger the opposite direction and asked, "She is the girl, right?" The moment driver looked towards the pointed direction. He became stunned, wordless. He didn't believe what he saw. There was a big portrait of the same girl, hung on the wall of the hall, with garland decorated on her frame. She was wearing the same red dress and looked exactly like the girl whom he had dropped half an hour ago. The old man said, "Don't worry, son, relax. She is my daughter. She passed away 21 years ago, in a car accident near the highway. Since then, this auto and lift incident has happened 5 to 6 times. I don't believe it. But the way drivers describe her, I have to pay them. I miss her." The driver remained dumbstruck. Didn't know what to say. The driver said, "Leave it, sir. I don't want my money. I am sorry to disturb you. I have to go." He was scared as hell. The man insisted him to take the money, but without listening anything, the driver started his auto and left the spot. When my wife and I bought our first house, an old Victorian style built in the 50s, almost every night we heard what sounded like a kid's footsteps running down the upstairs hallway and other random sounds. My wife mentioned it to one of the neighbors and they said it was probably just peacocks on the roof. The house backed up to a conservation area where wild peacocks lived and they would occasionally get up on the rooftops. That answer made sense, so we basically got used to it and eventually ignored it. Less than a year later our son was born. And when he was 1 he would balance all of his toys on top of other toys and made them spin. Literally found the center of balance of various toys and would walk in a circle around the room, giving each a gentle touch to keep it rotating. It was the weirdest and coolest thing I had ever seen. When he was 2 or 3 we would hear him talking in his room at night, and one night I asked who he was talking to. He said, "Tracy." I asked, "Who is Tracy?" And he says, "The girl who lives in the wall. She's usually nice, but sometimes she scares me." He described a girl with brown hair in a yellow dress who would play with him sometimes, and occasionally wake him up at night, but he didn't seem bothered by any of it, just startled sometimes. He would talk about her once in a while, but it wasn't a common occurrence. A couple years later we had added on to the house and moved the master bedroom downstairs, switching the kids' rooms around. Our youngest was now in his old room, and about ready to transition from crib to toddler bed. She had always been a sound sleeper, but she cried almost every night in that room. Her first night in the toddler bed we heard a loud thud followed by screaming and rushed into the room, thinking she had fallen out of bed. She was on the other side of the room. Got her calmed down and back to bed, and it happened again the next night. So we ended up switching the kids' rooms back and they were fine. We looked up the history of the house but didn't find anything about any missing little girls or anyone with the name Tracy that had lived there. Eventually our son stopped talking about her, and a few years later I ended up taking a job with another company and we moved. The house was empty for a few months after we moved, and the neighbor across the street called my wife one day. Said about a week after we left she thought she saw our daughter looking out the window, so she waved to her. And then she remembered we didn't live there anymore.